Now, the Southern African Development Community has called an emergency meeting over the situation in Mozambique. Disputed election results there have led to volatile nationwide protests and a tense political impasse. SADC's intervention is aimed at ensuring stability, they say, after the polls. But let's unpack that now. We're joined by Dr. Mpofu, who is with the Wits Center for Diversity Studies. Dr. Mpofu, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. SADC doesn't really have the best track record, does it, of holding countries to account or standing in solidarity with citizens who are oppressed. What do you make of this gathering later this month?
It is unfortunately so, because over the decades, SADC has not displayed any fidelity to the ordinary peoples of Southern Africa that might now and again need protection from their rogue, violent, and sometimes tyrannical governments. SADC has not built that reputation of siding with the citizens of Southern African countries. So with this gathering coming after this simmering crisis in Mozambique, what we can possess for ourselves is what political analysts have called the tragic optimism.
So you reckon this is a box-ticking exercise of some sort? I think we may have lost your audio there, Dr. Mpofu, but can you hear us?
I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me?
We lost you for a few seconds there, but please continue your thought.
Yes, what we can have is tragic optimism of knowing that SADC does not have the reputation to deliver, but this time they might deliver under pressure from Southern African people that have taken to the streets, have had enough, and are saying, not in our name, let's have democracy now, let's have liberation.
It's either that or worst case scenario, this is a box-ticking exercise to say, we tried.
They might attempt another performance of appearing to be doing something. But I think the pressure electorally and politically from Southern African people in all the Southern African countries has mounted to such a level that it cannot be ignored. So SADC might behave after all, because if they do not, it might end in tears for them, because they might lose relevance. They might lose presence. The people of Southern Africa might look back and try other avenues of appeal, like protests, military coups, and other avenues of negotiating and navigating power.
The irony, Dr. Mpofu, is that Zimbabwe currently holds the SADC chair. And that country held elections at the end of last year, and there were similar concerns when the results were released there.
It's more than an irony, because it is also a painful political paradox, where a SADC commission openly condemned the elections and declared them unfree, unfair, and invalid. And then the same Southern African multilateral body, in the shape of SADC, goes on to endorse the president of such an electoral outcome as SADC chair. So it says a lot about SADC itself and its political ethics, its toothlessness, and its inability to respect and legitimate the will of the people of Southern Africa. And I think SADC has limited time to recover itself and its name from this association with tyranny, political violence, electoral fraud, and other political evils.
Because right now, what SADC is known as in many critical circles is a boys' club that refuses to hold each other accountable.
Not just a boys' club. It is a boys' club because women are peripherized in political leadership in the Southern African region, which is another tragedy. But also now, it's actually what they've called a club of tyrants that group together to protect themselves from the will of their people. And it's a tragedy because many decades after the end of administrative colonialism, we expect African governments, Southern African governments, to respect the people of Southern Africa and deliver the liberation that was promised, deliver the democracy that was promised, respect the constitutionalism that was promised.
I'm glad you talk about the issue of liberation. It brings me to my next question, Dr. Mpofu. Liberation movements, do they still have space in a contemporary context where we've seen a trend of electoral losses for liberation movements, particularly in South Africa? We've just had that experience in May.
Yeah, we should go back to the very politics of naming. Where are they liberation movements? I think we should call them independence movement, because the long struggles, armed and unarmed, against colonialism and apartheid in Southern Africa did not deliver any liberation. It just delivered political independence, new national flags, new melodious national anthems, new black men in power, and nothing else. So no liberation was delivered by these movements. They just delivered political independence. They were independence movements. And I think it's too late in the day for them to keep counting on their solidarities, because there's a young generation of Africans that has arisen, that is voting, that is in political activism, that is in academia, that is in journalism, and in other sectors, that are not going to put up with these tyrannies. Because such independence movement like ZANU-PF actually turned out to be native colonialists when they took power after the colonial administrations were exhausted. They used the same means of coercion, electoral fraud, political violence, intimidation, that were being used by colonial regimes to keep power by any means necessary. But a generation of Africans has arisen that is saying no. And so I think before it ends in tears, they must reinvent themselves or just exit the stage and allow a new generation of political leaders to take over and try to drive the continent of Africa towards long-awaited liberation.
Absolutely. Dr. William Mpofu, let me thank you for your time this afternoon. He's a political analyst with the Wits Center for Diversity Studies.